The House could vote as early as Wednesday on a compromise to raise the nation's debt ceiling before the country defaults on its loans. The wings of each party have both opposed the plan, meaning the president and Speaker Kevin McCarthy will need the support of most House moderates to get the deal passed. So for more on this, let's go to Ray Zaccaro and Hogan Gidley, who join us now. Ray is the director of public affairs for the AFL-CIO and a Democratic strategist. Hogan is the senior advisor at the America First Policy Institute and was formerly a White House deputy press secretary for former President Trump. Guys, thanks for being here with us on a holiday. So while both parties are rallying support for this debt ceiling bill, Connecticut Democrat Congressman Jim Himes discussed just Sunday where he is leaning so far.
In a government of divided powers, I regard my role acting as a check and balance on the president very, very seriously. Now, this takes me back to why I hope we move beyond ransom note and hostage taking as a legislative mechanism, because, of course, I'm tempted to say no, I'm in no vote, because, as the speaker said, there is absolutely nothing for the Democrats in these things.
Wow. All right. So, Ray, first to you. Will President Biden be able to get Democrats behind this debt ceiling bill? And what will it look like when he campaigns on it?
Well, I think the 2024 campaign structure has been outlined. Essentially, Republicans, Kevin McCarthy has made it very clear that the party is right now being led in his moment by extremist Republicans who have decided that their platform for 2024 is let's take food out of the mouths of children, and on Memorial Day of all days, think about removing benefits from veterans, putting Social Security and Medicare at risk, putting the entire economy and global economic structure on the brink of disaster, to continue to give tax cuts to billionaires and make sure that that structure stays in place. So I think that President Biden is going to have a lot of support by folks who think that this kind of deal making, this kind of negotiation of holding the economy hostage in a critical moment is not the way to govern. And what President Biden does have to campaign on is a clear record of accomplishment, of rebuilding our infrastructure in this country, bipartisan support for that, of securing our leadership in technology by passing the CHIPS Act, by reinvigorating our economy and bringing in valuable and necessary investments into America's working people. And what is Speaker McCarthy showing? Speaker McCarthy is showing that the obvious answer of what the GOP stands for 2024 is to put the lives and health and safety of America's working people at risk.
Hogan, so there was speculation that Speaker McCarthy would not be able to get this done. Of course, there are people in his own party who are not crazy about it on both sides, Democrats and Republicans. So what does the agreement say about McCarthy's ability to govern with a narrow majority?
Look, I think there are political realities that exist in this situation and in this town. And the fact of the matter is, Speaker McCarthy and Republicans wanted a whole lot more to be done to bring down the debt and the deficit. Obviously, there was going to be no conversation about letting us default. So he raised the debt limit. 70% of the time in these negotiations, people tie the debt limit with the negotiations on cutting spending. That's just the fact of the matter. So this isn't new by any stretch of the imagination. But of course, McCarthy didn't get everything he wanted. And that's how negotiations work. You have people on the right like Chip Roy who are angry at a lot of these things. It remains to be seen, though, whether it's going to pass the House. I'm hearing by all of my sources, but also talking to reporters, that it looks like it's a done deal, that the House is going to vote for this. You're going to have Democrats come on board. You're going to have Republicans come on board, too, at the end of the day. But the fact is, the American people, by a large measure, 60%, do want some type of spending cuts to go along with an increase in the debt limit. And I hear from the White House consistently that we need to pay our bills. It's about paying our bills. But they're not paying the bills. In fact, when it comes to that limit, they just increase the credit card limit and say, spend a little bit more here. And then what the left was trying to get us to do was to say, hey, leave everything as status quo, raise the debt limit so we don't have to address the spending problem now. Let's do it later when it's much, much worse. The American people do not like where this economy is headed. A majority of Democrats don't want Joe Biden in the White House anymore. A majority of Americans think it would be a disaster if he got reelected. So the Democrats have a real problem here. But these are two different arguments. One is about the here and now and a debt limit. and a spending issue that I think they're going to get worked out by Wednesday when they vote. And the other one is a pathway forward and what we're going to campaign on. Those two things are separate. And Joe Biden doesn't have too much to work with by all the measurable polling, but also people just don't like what they're seeing from this federal government in a myriad of different ways.
Well, speaking of campaigning, let's switch to 2024. So Florida Governor Ron DeSantis officially kicked off his 2024 presidential campaign Wednesday night. And tomorrow he will make his first campaign swing as a candidate beginning in Des Moines, Iowa. And former President Trump, meanwhile, gets to the Hawkeye State on Wednesday. So, Hogan, what does DeSantis need to do early to jump back in the race after, polls showed he was really sliding behind your former boss in many of these polls before his announcement last week, Hogan?
40 points behind. And what you don't want to have a conversation about, the two words in the same sentence, are announcement and damage control. And that's what he had to do because of the problematic start. Ron DeSantis was trying to get into the ring with Donald Trump. He tripped up the stairs. He tried to go through the ropes and got his foot caught, fell flat on his face on the canvas. But now he's up and now he's fighting. And the question becomes, can you take a punch? Can you give a punch? And at the same time, make people like you in the process. In addition to that, and the message, of course, has to be there too, can you build the apparatus you need to win in states like Iowa, South Carolina, and New Hampshire? Do you have the ground game? Can you turn out the vote at the critical time? That's what matters here. Of course, you've got to sell a good product. So that works in tandem. But the real question now is the announcement's done, the fanfare, the criticism, that's all done as it relates to the announcement. Now they're in the ring going toe-to-toe. And who's gonna be able to deliver that knockout punch? And right now, Trump is way ahead, as I mentioned, 40 points, and it looks like he's got it in the right position right now, focusing on those America First issues.
So, Ray, while these Republicans are crisscrossing, what does President Biden needs to do ahead of 2024?
Well, President Biden needs to do exactly what he's been doing, which is governing with extraordinary leadership, helping create millions of jobs in this country, and not really wading into what the disaster that appears to be the gathering storm of the Republican primary looks like right now. And President Biden has a unique moment right now to lead on a record of accomplishments second to none. This is by far one of the most productive first halves of a first term of any president in recent history. And he's building back an economy that's based on working people, that's not based on tax cuts for billionaires and millionaires. The arguments happening on the other side of the aisle are clear. There is a structural and fractured party, structural problem, fractured party on the right.
All right, Ray Zaccaro and Hogan Gidley, thanks to both of you.